Salutations. It is March 30th, 2026, a Monday. Today, I want to discuss something that, in my opinion, really gets to the heart of the issue of what this fight has actually produced. Not in terms of interceptor totals or missile counts, but in terms of the implications for the millions of Tel Aviv residents who are trying to figure out whether their house can still protect them. Indeed, the 31st day. And before we discuss it, I'd want to start with a figure that, in my opinion, has to be presented clearly and given a moment of silence. 11% of people in Tel Aviv do not have access to sufficient shelter. A representative of the local municipality told the Knesset Special Committee, while locals complain to lawmakers that available shelters in the south of the city are overcrowded and suffer from neglect, vandalism, and sanitation issues. We have placed 20 portable shelters throughout the city. In Tel Aviv, there are 560 standard protection facilities. But despite this, 11% of Tel Aviv residents do not have a standard protected space that allows them to reach a shelter within a reasonable time during a siren. 11% of a city of over 400,000 people, that is approximately 44,000 people in Tel Aviv alone, who when the sirens go off have no reliable shelter to reach in the 90 seconds that the civil defense system assumes is available. And that 92 assumption itself, as I have discussed in previous programs, is increasingly doubtful given the flight times of the faster Iranian missiles and the failure rate of the warning system in actually sounding the sirens before impact. Let me build the picture of what has happened to Tel Aviv over the 31 days of this conflict because I think it needs to be assembled in aggregate rather than processed as individual incidents because only the aggregate reveals what has actually changed. On the 28th of February, a direct hit in Tel Aviv killed a civilian woman and injured 22 others, one seriously. That was day one, the very first day of the conflict. An Iranian missile killed a civilian in Tel Aviv. Between the 28th of February and the 4th of March, more than 90 attempted Iranian strikes against Israel were recorded with around 20 directly hitting civilian areas, resulting in at least 10 people killed, 10 dead in 5 days from a war that was supposed to produce regime change in Iran, rather than casualties in Tel Aviv. On the 17th of March, a cluster munition from the warhead of an Iranian missile hit an apartment building in Ramat Gan and killed 2 residents in their 70s who were found just outside their safe room. 2 elderly people outside their safe room. The safe room, the MMA, is the reinforced concrete room that every Israeli residential building constructed since the 1990s has been required to include. It is the last resort protection that the Israeli civil defense system promises will keep its citizens safe when everything else fails. And these 2 people were found just outside it. They had not made it inside in time, or the door would not open, or they had heard the siren but underestimated how close the impact would be. We do not know exactly. What we know is that they are dead, and they were found outside their safe room. Drone footage shows extensive damage to a multi-story residential building in Tel Aviv following a wave of Iranian missile strikes on the Israeli city. And on the 24th of March, an Iranian ballistic missile attack badly damaged property in Tel Aviv on Tuesday morning. The missiles triggered air raid sirens in Israel, including in Tel Aviv, where gaping holes were torn through a multi-story apartment building. Police in Tel Aviv said they were dealing with several impact sites of munitions. Israel's National Fire and Rescue Authority said the search was on for people trapped in one building in Tel Aviv. People trapped in a city of 400,000 in one of the most modern and wealthy urban environments in the Middle East. Gaping holes torn through a multi-story apartment building, and Tel Aviv Mayor Ram Hulai telling reporters many homes were damaged, and I assume others will be found when the examination is over. He said the main building hit was old and will be demolished if there is no way to repair it. A civilian apartment building in central Tel Aviv that will be demolished because it has been hit by an Iranian ballistic missile and cannot be repaired. A resident of the damaged neighborhood told the Maariv news outlet he couldn't stop shaking after the impact. It was a crazy boom. I went to the stairwell with my partner and suddenly I heard a huge boom. I embraced her, and we were both scared. I told her it was right above us, right here above us. Right above us, in a residential apartment block in central Tel Aviv on a Tuesday morning, and the IDF investigating the failure to intercept the missile and finding, as reported by the Times of Israel, that the missile used in the attack had been intercepted before and is not considered a new threat. The defense system knows this missile. It has intercepted it before, and on this occasion it did not, because the IDF says several attempts to intercept the missile were made, but air defenses failed to knock the projectile down. Now, on the 26th of March, 9 of the 11 Iranian attack waves identified that day, approximately 60% were directed at the Tel Aviv area. 60% of that day's attacks concentrated on the Tel Aviv metropolitan area. Since the beginning of the campaign, a total of 377 Iranian attack waves against Israel have been identified. In cumulative distribution, the central region, particularly the Tel Aviv metropolitan area, remains the primary target. 377 attack waves in 31 days, more than 12 per day on average, and the primary target consistently and persistently across the entire campaign is the Tel Aviv area, the commercial heart of Israel, the financial center, the tech hub, the most densely populated urban area in the country, the place where the largest concentration of Israeli economic life and civilian population coincides. Iran is not attacking the Negev desert. It is not attacking sparsely populated border regions. It is pointing its missiles day after day, wave after wave at the city where Israeli civil society, Israeli culture, Israeli economic productivity, and Israeli political will are most concentrated. Since the start of the war, 18 civilians in Israel have been killed and more than 5,492 people have been injured to varying degrees as a result of direct impacts, falling interception debris, and secondary damage. In addition, thousands of civilians have been evacuated from their homes due to missile strikes, and the ongoing fire continues to disrupt daily life. 18 dead, over 5,000 wounded, thousands evacuated, and the conflict is in its 31st day with no ceasefire and no end in sight. I want to compare those numbers to something. The June 2025 12-day war lasted, as the name says, 12 days. The 5-day total between the 28th of February and the 4th of March represents more than 60% of all Iran's attacks recorded during the entire 12-day war last June. In 5 days in this conflict, Iran fired more at Israel than in the entire 12-day war. And this conflict has now lasted 31 days. The Israeli civil defense architecture, the Mahmad safe rooms, the Homefront command alert system, the network of shelters was designed and maintained on the assumption that Israel would face acute, short-duration missile threats requiring civilians to take cover for days or perhaps weeks, after which the military situation would resolve and normal life would resume. The system was not designed for 31 consecutive days of daily missile attacks, and the evidence of that design gap is becoming visible in the reports that are reaching us from inside Israel. Overcrowded shelters with sanitation problems, neglected and vandalized shelter facilities in the south of Tel Aviv, 11% of the city's population without adequate shelter access, a municipality placing 20 portable shelters across a city of 400,000 people, and describing this as an enhancement of provision. And then there is the psychological dimension, which I think is as important as the physical and which the casualty statistics do not fully capture. A resident named Doron said it was a crazy boom. I went to the stairwell with my partner and suddenly I heard a huge boom. I embraced her and we were both scared. I told her it was right above us, right here above us. That is 31 days of sleeping with one ear alert to the sound of a siren. 31 days of looking at your children's faces and calculating whether the shelter is close enough and whether you can carry the baby and unlock the reinforced door and get everyone inside in 90 seconds. 31 days of going to work, if work is still operating, knowing that you may hear the alert while you are in a building. You do not know the shelter layout of 31 days of this in a city of 400,000 people, and the war is not over. Now, the Iranian targeting logic, which I want to address because I think it is rather more coherent than the reporting sometimes suggests. Iran is not firing at Tel Aviv randomly. It is firing at Tel Aviv deliberately and consistently. On March 26th, approximately 60% of attack waves were directed at the Tel Aviv area. The central region, particularly the Tel Aviv metropolitan area, remains the primary target in cumulative distribution since the start of the war. Why Tel Aviv? Because Tel Aviv is what Iran's military planners understand to be the center of Israeli strategic gravity, not Jerusalem, which is the political and religious capital, but is geographically and symbolically contested in ways that complicate targeting. Not Haifa, which is an important industrial and port city, but not the hub of Israeli economic and political decision-making. Tel Aviv, the headquarters of the Israeli Defense Ministry, the location of IDF General Staff Headquarters at the Kiryat, the address of the major Israeli defense and technology companies whose products sustain the war effort, the financial center through which the Israeli economy runs, the media and cultural center from which Israeli domestic political IKL narratives are constructed and disseminated. Iran is firing at all of those things simultaneously every day, and it is doing so through the expedient of firing at the densely populated city in which all of them are located. And the specific weapon developments I have discussed in previous programs are all oriented toward maximizing the effect of strikes on a city like Tel Aviv. The Fata 2 arriving faster than the warning system can complete its cycle means that in a significant proportion of attacks, the sirens sound after the impact, not before. The cluster munition configuration of the Hamshar dispersing up to 80 bombolets across an 8-kilometer radius means that even a partially intercepted missile can still scatter dozens of explosive submunitions across an urban neighborhood. The Fata 3 releasing 15 independently guided submunitions at Mach 15 at 8 kilometers altitude means that a single launch can produce 15 simultaneous impacts across a wide area. Each of these weapons was designed to defeat a specific element of the urban defense problem, and Tel Aviv is the city against which they are all being tested in real operational conditions every day. Police Superintendent Feda Yaniv confirmed damage to central Tel Aviv on Tuesday was caused by an Iranian warhead with about 100 kilograms of explosives which directly impacted a residential street. First responders combed through rubble after the missile struck. 100 kilon of explosives on a residential street in central Tel Aviv on a Tuesday morning. And the IRGC continued wave after wave after wave, 377 attack waves in 31 days. There is a concept in military theory called strategic paralysis, associated most closely with the American air power theorist John Boyd, which describes the objective of a sustained air and missile campaign not as the physical destruction of the adversary's military capacity, but as the degradation of the adversary's will and ability to function. Function as a coherent political and social entity. You do not need to kill everyone in a city to paralyze it. You need to make normal life sufficiently dangerous and sufficiently unpredictable that the institutions and relationships and economic activities that constitute normal life begin to break down. Businesses close or relocate. Skilled people leave, capital migrates to safer locations, political will to continue the conflict erodes, as the population asks whether the objectives being pursued are worth what they are being asked to endure. And the government that started the conflict begins to face pressure, not from the enemy outside, but from its own population inside. Drone footage shows extensive damage to a multi-story residential building in Tel Aviv. A woman stands inside a building damaged in an Iranian attack in Tel Aviv. First responders combed through rubble after a missile struck a street in central Tel Aviv. Israeli emergency teams at the site of an Iranian missile attack in a residential area in Tel Aviv. These are not images from the outskirts of the country. They are not images from border settlements or military zones. They are images from the central residential streets of the most important civilian city in Israel. And Iran's military planners know exactly what they are doing by making those images the daily visual record of this war. I want to be careful here about what I am saying and what I am not saying. I am not saying that Iran is winning this war in the conventional military sense. The American air campaign has done real damage to Iranian military infrastructure. Thousands of targets struck, missile production facilities damaged, launcher positions destroyed. The pace of Iranian attacks has declined from triple digits on day one to single digits on some recent days. Iran has paid an enormous price in civilian casualties, with official Iranian figures putting deaths at over 1,400 and wounded at over 18,000. The human cost on the Iranian side is vastly greater than on the Israeli side by any measure. And I want to be absolutely clear that I find the scale of that suffering in Iran deeply and genuinely disturbing. But what I am saying is this: Tel Aviv is no longer a safe city. Not in the sense that was assumed before the 28th of February. The assumption was that Israel's layered missile defense, the most sophisticated in the world, would make Israeli cities essentially protected from Iranian attack. That assumption has been refuted. Gaping holes in apartment buildings. A woman killed on day 1. 2 elderly residents found dead just outside their safe room. 11% of Tel Aviv residents without adequate shelter access. 377 attack waves. 18 dead. 5,000 wounded. And the war is still going. Iran has pointed a gun at the heart of Tel Aviv. The gun is not always firing. Some days the sirens sound and nothing impacts. Some days the defense intercepts the incoming missiles and the debris falls harmlessly. But some days it does not. And the inhabitants of Tel Aviv know, having lived through 31 days of this, that on any given morning when they wake up, they cannot be certain that today will not be one of the days when something comes through. 31 days, no ceasefire, no end visible. A war that was supposed to produce regime change in Iran has produced, among other things, gaping holes in residential buildings on the streets of Tel Aviv. Anyway, that is me for today. In these very difficult and dangerous days, wherever you are watching from, I wish you peace and safety. Have a very good